Hi everyone, Lorea here. This is the river of San Sebastian, and this is my third story on racism in the Basque country that I have experienced since living here. This was the very first apartment that I lived in. It's on this lovely street called Paseo de Francia, and I'm going to tell you about a neighbor that absolutely terrorized me, and it was a horrible introduction to living here in the Basque country. Her name is Carmen Pintado Goni, and this woman is a nightmare. When I first moved in, my landlord had a tourism license. Carmen had terrorized his guests, the tourists, by turning up at the door, banging on it and telling them to keep quiet. His clients were good clientele. They paid a lot of money to rent the apartment, so why would this woman deliberately go and harass them? The truth is, because she's retired, she has nothing better to do, and maybe she's just crazy, right? I decided not to listen to my landlord though, because I always give people the benefit of the doubt, and I decided to get to know her for myself if she made an effort to know me, which she did. She was curious. She'd never really lived amongst an Asian person before. I'm Eurasian, but she didn't seem to realize that. So what happened was, this is her apartment right here. She decided to be friends with me, and I told her that I was looking for something to buy in the city. And since she was an agent, and I learned later on that BBVA, the bank, had actually given her apartment for selling all the other ones in this complex, she decided that she was going to be my agent. She was very much pushing one of the smaller apartments, a one-bedroom, in this building in order for me to buy it. Now, I wasn't sure because I just arrived and I needed to check out other apartments, so I was a bit hesitant. But around 6 months later, I finally decided, yes, I'm going to buy it. And she told me on the day that she was going to sell it to someone else. I felt very betrayed by her, because these negotiations had taken a long time. She'd never told me that anybody else was interested in it. All of a sudden, she just decided to sell it to someone else. And what I realized later was because there was a bigger apartment, this one here, with river views, she thought that she could do a double deal by selling the smaller one that I wanted to someone else and then selling me this bigger one. So she started to harass me after she finished the first deal. She started sending me emails, calling me. I felt very, very harassed by her. And so at one point, I said to her, please stop contacting me. I'm not interested anymore in buying anything in this building. I don't want the other apartment, and I need to look at other options. She was trying to push me over to buying in Irún. It seemed to me like this woman had no sense. Why would I go to Irún and buy something? And it turned out that she has a lot of connections in Irún. She's originally living there and she's from Navarra. So when I told her that I no longer wanted her to represent me and that I was tired of the phone calls and the emails, she then one day sent me 22 emails, okay? And she called me a bitch, she called me a pig, she said I was uncultured, uneducated, that I should go back to China where I came from, that I had no idea of Basque culture, which was ironic because I am actually part Basque. My first name and my surname is Basque, and her name is not Basque at all, so she's not even Basque, but she lives in the Basque country. And this was so harassing that I told my landlord about it, and he said, Lorea, she does the same to me. She sends me all these emails, and my response is basically not to answer them. He said, I get something from her and I don't answer it. Don't let it affect you. Fair enough. So I decided to stay on living in the community, even though I felt fairly harassed by this woman. And one day I parked my bicycle right here in the courtyard, just here in the shade. And I locked it. And as it was raining, I had no umbrella. I quickly rushed up to my home to prepare lunch. And when I came back down 2 hours later, it was gone. Now, I found it fairly strange, right? Because if you look, this river is quite dynamic. There's a lot of people walking all the time. There's a lot of activities. So for somebody to climb in, grab the bike with the lock on it, not being able to wheel it away, they'd have to bring it over this fence, and it's just impossible. So I thought it has to be someone in the community. And who would it be? It would be Carmen, because she is that spiteful to do something like that. But I had no proof. And then I went on a holiday to Italy for 2 weeks with my family, and when I came back, somebody had put glue in my door, like the glue that you would use in a glue gun, so it dries up really quickly. We arrived at 10 o'clock at night. I had to call a locksmith to come and open it at midnight, more or less, and he told me, "You're lucky, it had only been put into the lock a few hours ago." So he was able to remove the glue. Otherwise, I had to change the whole lock. The locks here in San Sebastian, they are like really high security, so it would have cost me and the landlord a lot of money to do that. After that incident happened, I bought another bike. This time, I parked it in my car park with the lock on it, and again, it went missing. So this time, I couldn't shut up. First of all, I went down to her floor, she lives below me, to see if anything was going on. And by coincidence, her husband was opening the door of another neighbor's apartment. I found it really strange, but then I realized, yes, Carmen has always tried to get a monopoly on this whole building here. She's always wanted all the landlords to rent and sell through her, and she gets very vindictive and nasty, menacing, a bully when they decide to go with other agents in the city. The second time my bicycle went missing, I knew it was her. And when I saw her husband open the door of the other apartment, I quickly called my landlord and said, "Who owns this apartment? Does it have a storeroom? A trastero?" Because it was my logic that they wouldn't hide my bicycle in the apartment because they had to show the apartment to potential buyers. But if there was a storeroom attached to it, my bike would be in there. Sure enough, he called the administrators of the building. They said yes, it had a storeroom, and the administrators contacted the landlord. The landlord gave them the permission to go to the police with me, and 10 p.m. at night, we finally went to the police with the administrator and the keys to the apartment, and the police came back at around 11 p.m. late to the trastero. They watched the administrator open the trastero, and there inside the storeroom was my bicycle. I was so happy. I started crying because I had gone through so much shit living in this beautiful building. Can you imagine that such a beautiful building by the river, your first experience of living in a new city, and you end up with a neighbor like this? It's a relatively wealthy community, a wealthy city, and you get people like this. It was unbelievable to me. We took my bike out, and obviously I had to take her to court. She turned up with her husband. They both denied that they had taken it, even though they had been caught red-handed. First of all, knowing Carmen, she doesn't lift a finger to do anything. She used to order all her groceries and have them delivered. There would be like 20 bags of groceries in her living room when I went to visit her. So I'm sure she didn't take my bicycle herself. It was her idea, but one of the men in her family, either her husband or her son, which incidentally, this is another interesting thing about this woman. She has a restraining order taken out against her own son. So she didn't allow him to come home to stay with her. And yet I would see him all the time lying out on her terrace, coming in and out of her home. He was not following the restraining order, and she, as his mother, was not enforcing it. But it kind of gives you an idea of what sort of family this is if you have to take a restraining order out against your own children. So in the court, the judge sided with me. She said that she totally believed they had taken the bike. And then I waited for the verdict because I asked for financial compensation, for all the suffering that I had endured. It wasn't a lot, but it was a token, and I knew I was never going to get an apology from her, which is what I really wanted. And so I waited, and then what this lady did, instead of being afraid that I had taken her to court, she went to the neighbours who helped me in their testimonials, and she punctured the tires of their cars and their motorbikes. So there was one very nice neighbour. She was renting, and she owns a lovely fashion shop in the middle of San Sebastian. The lawyer that represented me on this case, she introduced me to him. And another lovely neighbour absolutely hated her. He was actually the one that lived directly opposite her apartment. He was renting as well, and his motorbike's tires were punctured, as well as the other neighbour's car's tires. And what is interesting though is that the neighbour with the motorbike actually has video footage of Carmen puncturing the tires in the garage. But when I asked him to give me the video, he decided not to give it to me because he was leaving the community soon, because he also was fed up. And subsequently, both of the neighbours have moved out of this community. In fact, more than them, other neighbours have as well. Carmen was terrorising everybody that she could. And she was doing it in a way where she terrorised the people that rented because they were easy targets, and she knew that she wouldn't have to live with you long term, but she wouldn't terrorise the owners because those were the ones that were her bread and butter, who would give her commissions in case she managed to rent or sell anything. So when the verdict from the court came back, it was so disappointing. This is the issue that I have with Spanish law. They didn't award me anything. They closed the case. They said that this woman was on medication, and for some reason, medication apparently in this country allows you to act in ways such as this and get away with it. It's incredible. And the case was just dropped. So this woman had created a series of criminal activities in this building and against me. First of all, she had put glue in my door. She had slashed the neighbor's tires. She had stolen my bicycle twice. She had also given racist slurs against me in all the emails, which I presented to court. And she was able to walk free because she was on medication. This totally has me losing faith in the Spanish legal system, because if somebody does all these criminal activities and can just walk away, live back in the same community, not be penalized, what does it say about justice in this country? There is no justice. In any other country that has a good, solid justice system, somebody like this would be thrown into prison, for a couple of months, just to teach them a lesson or two. And after all of this happened, what was even worse was that it was clear Carmen didn't learn her lesson. Because do you know what she did? When I moved out of this community to another community in this city, she followed me there. One day she rang the bell of one of the neighbors in my new building looking for me. And the neighbors told me, oh, there was a crazy woman looking for you. She was asking for you, but we didn't open the door for her. Thank God for my new neighbors. But can you imagine that I have a stalker in this city? And she was continuing to want to terrorize me. One of the things that she mentioned as well, just before I moved out, was that she was going to get my ex-boyfriend called Alberto. She was very clear that she was going to get information about me from him and use it against me. And subsequently, I have went through a couple of issues here in the city, and I wonder whether Carmen was the one who bad-mouthed me or reported on me in order to get back at me somehow. So this is why I have to make videos like this, because I have to protect myself against bullies, stalkers, and racists, right? Enjoy your day, everyone. See you soon.